can start in one of two ways. You would all hear at the first Q&A. So you can start with my asking the faculty here, my colleagues' question, or we can start with you asking any of us a question. When you have a question, really wise market. This assumes, of course, that this tells us that you know everything. I'm back. Okay, so where's the hand? Great.
I think I just wanted to sort of, last week we had a discussion about golden era pianists and how now there are not many of them and not much people go playing that way anymore. So I just wanted to also like to ask your opinion on that.
Yeah, so we've had a long discussion about golden era pianists and whether to be really famous and successful, we have to be a golden era pianist, even though we're not in the golden era, so to speak. I mean, my thought after all the discussion is, we can't go back in time, and so we're not going to be able to recreate that era. But when you go forward in time, we take pieces or wonderful things from that time and you bring it into the present. You know, you bring the past into the present, and they take the present and project it into the future. Not only that, but you know, the Oppens history of sound is fascinating and wonderful. We have taxed with a lot of it. So we don't want to throw all that out as garbage because it's wonderful stuff. So really the question is, I guess, how do you see the future of sound? And we were talking about creativity, how do you do something that's really unique? I mean, I guess the opening question to Boris was, how do you teach your students how if they are creative and how you practice so you keep something fresh and so that it doesn't get boring and it doesn't get dull. You keep your sense of refinement and aliveness. His answer started with talking about sound. Eventually, we worked our way to the golden age. So I don't know who wants to talk first, too. I mean, but I'm sure thoughts.
Well, I think it's a great question. There is a very entertaining book by a Scottish pianist, Kenneth Hamilton, called After the Golden Age. And one of the things that he starts off by saying is that the present age has always thought of the past as the golden time. That in the late 19th century, people would say, well, nobody plays like they used to 50 years ago. And throughout history, this has been the case. And we say that today. I think when we're talking about the golden age, we're talking about those pianists who were born in the 19th century, who lived many of them into the beginning of the recorded sound era, passed away in the mid-20th century. Courtauld is one of those people, of course. And I would love to hear Jerry's take on this. But I think my opinion is that there are many things about today that are wonderful, and certainly on a certain level, piano playing is more popular and more proficient than it's ever been. How do we recapture the past? I'm not sure that that's possible. It's certainly not possible to do so in an authentic way. I don't think you can imitate Ignaz Friedman and Alfred Cortot. You could, but it would be a parody of what they're doing, and it would not be honest, and it wouldn't be true to most of us for who we are. But I think we can learn a lot from these artists by listening to them and learning how they communicate the music. But there's a kind of charisma and a kind of X factor that they have that I find hard to put into words. It's not just rubato, it's not just the sound, it's not just the culture, it's all of what they have. And if you take one aspect that you like, it's like my students, when they come in and play a piece for me, and the tempo is super duper fast and it's incomprehensible, I say, well, you must have been listening to the Argerich recording, which is usually the case. And of course, they've taken Argerich's tempo, but they lack everything else that makes her a great artist. You can't cherry pick the little things that you like like Alfred Cortot's rubato, and hope to make it a convincing performance. Jerry, do you have any thoughts?
Yes. One of my students years ago, fresh to Juilliard, said to me, when you and your friends were young, did you realize that you were in the golden age of piano? And I said, no, we thought it was the age before us. So that's to continue what you were saying. Now, our challenge is complicated because we're playing music mainly from the past, and we approach it reverentially, and we're told, and we tell our students, that they must play it exactly correctly. And at the same time, we're told and tell our students, you must be creative, you must be different. And this poses a genuine problem. One of the answers, of course, is to play new music, but that can only be part of the answer. And I myself have said often, and I will say it now, that this is the golden age of piano. But that doesn't mean the golden age of inventive rubato. But it means that the standard of accomplished and artistic piano playing has never been so high, in the sense that there have never been so many wonderful pianists around. And I certainly I can remember in the past, and at the schools, we know that the level, those of us who have survived the past, know the level is much higher in the schools than it was today. So we have to pursue our sense of the music, and we have to move with the possibilities of the culture. The culture does change, and not necessarily for the worse. We have all sorts of possibilities for young pianists that were not available 50 years ago. And our students take advantage of those. So I'm giving a message of hope. There's always in the star system, there's always the irritating disparity between the quantity of wonderful pianists on the one hand and the rarity of stellar careers. But there are other things to do besides have star careers, and those things are wider today than they were in the past. So I think you could look at all this with a happy, optimistic point of view.
Anybody else want to say anything? Well, I would like to say that in a way, the question of making this fresh has also to do with the audience for whom we are playing. For most people, we go to a school, we play for teachers, we play for juries, we do competitions, we play for more juries. But this isn't what it's about. It's about playing for people who are, teachers, dentists, machinists, painters, and having them love the music the way we love it. And for all this kind of trying to play as well as possible, as expressively as possible, is really to help us actually communicate not with the teacher, not with the jury, but with our audience. And one thing I found in the last few years is after the pandemic, I was so glad to be in a room with many other people. And I think human beings are social. And I think, you know, we want to play a Beethoven sonata for some people who want to come into the room and hear us. And that's, so it'll always be fresh. And we have to just play for when we hear it.
The thoughts come up as far as golden age. I think we live in a different world. I give an example. About 10 years ago, I was at a Monet exhibition, special exhibition in London, and there was Mr. Brandl, who I took several lessons with. He remembered me because he lived in Ungár, so he remembered that my name was Ungár. So it was easy for him. And he took me aside, he says, look at that painting. And he described it. And you know, my relationship with him was basically on a one-to-one. I did not know his side. Of course, I knew he wrote fantastic books. I could quote them for him. But he was a worldly character in my lifetime. Scheberg is another person. If you look at his, we were at his home. His books were so far apart, not only on music, but philosophy, physics, maths. It wasn't, the piano playing was only just a certain part of his life. It was not, like in so many of the days, the center of it, called total. Because everything adds to it. It's, you cannot possibly live without going to the opera. You cannot possibly imagine Tchaikovsky without ballet, or Prokofiev without ballet. All this they had time for. It wasn't push a button and it's there. And that destroys in so many of us this instantaneous gratification of having music at your fingertips. Sometimes I ask my students, who did you listen to? Oh, YouTube. Well, you know, on YouTube you have so many people playing that big switch one. Oh, the first one. You look at the first one and you say, who's that person, for God's sake? Anybody can record and put it up there. If you're going to, why don't you go and do some detailed work of, maybe it's somebody you should listen to instead of just anybody who plays the same piece. I think we also mentioned it at lunchtime, that everybody is walking around with this thing in their ears. I can't stand it. And the sound is so immediate into your brains that it is wrong. Space is sound. Space is living. And you don't experience that. We have that same problem. So few people go to concerts. Why? We used to go to concerts because we were interested in music. Not only because we love music, and we still love music, but because it's an experience. It should be. And that, I think that you're asking the question, what's happening today and what's happening in the past, that is one of the biggest thoughts in my mind that separates when I was in the 50s and 60s. That I remember Richter we were told that Richter is coming in 2 days to Budapest. The tickets were gone in 5 seconds, literally, and I was sitting on the stage like this, on that side. I remember him coming out with slippers on. He forgot to put his shoes on. And I was 9 years old, and I thought I was in seventh heaven. It was an experience. In the end, I don't know, you were there at Harvey Skate.
I was there when, Richard.
Richter too. It was an experience, for God's sake. But we are at that stage when if one of my students plays amazingly, that's an experience. Because I'm open-minded. Music is living within us. And I don't feel that the present generation is living the music. They just simply make it. And making music is only a portion of what you should be doing. I preach all the time. I take my students to the museum. Say, just sit in front of the painting and for 5 minutes and just get it in there, in your mind. It's very, very important. And unfortunately, we preach to you because we experience it, and experience tells us we should say these things to you, but you don't have the time for it. You literally, the first thing you do when you come in here, you start to go, who texted me, who's on the line, who can I contact, instead of living music that's on stage. It's not a complaint, it's just a fact.
Just pretty much the
I told one, but I want to go back to the first question that you talked about, how to keep things fresh. And I find that's a difficult problem for me as well, if I'm not learning enough new repertoire, how to keep something fresh throughout life. There are certain things that we could do, of course. You can listen to other music, that's always very, very valuable. If you're playing a Beethoven sonata, you might as well listen to Beethoven quartets or Beethoven concerti or symphonies or something of that sort, so that you get new ideas. I also do listen to recordings, oftentimes older recordings, so that I hear ideas that are different than mine, and that always creates a kind of challenge for me. If I like what they're doing, that I have to decide why I like what they're doing. If I really don't like what they're doing, which is often the case for whatever reason, because I'm just kind of that kind of guy, I have to say, well, why? And then it strengthens my ideas, as it were. I also find that it is freshening, if I can coin that word, to play on many different kinds of pianos, under many different kinds of circumstances. For instance, I came here and I have to practice certain things that I have to play in some concerts next week. And I'm playing on different pianos than I'm playing on at home. And I'm hearing new things because the piano is maybe a little bit out of condition or something, but it is making me hear new things. That's quite exciting sometimes. And I found in the last few days things that I had never understood or heard before in pieces that I've been playing for 20 years. So that is just good, to simply change your circumstance or to play for somebody. Or whenever you see a piano at a restaurant, sit down and play it, or in the airport or something like that. Because it can really be freshening to simply change your circumstances. And, it's very valuable to listen to older recordings. For instance, if you're playing Chopin. When I find that lots of people play Chopin, in my opinion, in a way that is really goes back to kind of Rubinstein. You've heard Rubinstein play Chopin a lot. He kind of is the template that people play like that in general. But if you listen to older recordings of people who lived closer to when Chopin was alive, maybe they were born 10 years after he died or something like that, then you hear a much wider variety of interpretation and approach. That can be very, very interesting. I was teaching the fourth ballade recently to a student, and I said, okay, we're going to listen to somebody, and we're just going to listen to the 1930 quartet recording of his fourth ballade. Fascinating recording. I felt it was really, really great. And then we heard, as a contrast, Samson Francois, a famous French pianist, do that. And I had an opinion, definitely, about who I liked and who I didn't like for certain reasons. But my student's opinion was different. He liked, well, I'll just come out and say, he liked Samson Francois. I didn't like that recording so much, although I have liked many things that he's done. That's not a diss against Francois, Samson Francois. But I didn't like his recording of the ballade. And then we talked about it. I said, I don't like this recording because it is more focused on this aspect, but I loved Courteau's recording because it was so narrative, and it taught me about why this piece is called a ballade, which is a story, which is a piece that someone is singing about something, and I heard it in Courteau's play. So, we talked about that, and that sort of idea, there are certain things that Courteau does in 1930, which are endemic to the culture and the time that he was in, but what is important to Courteau can be also important to us as we play in our way of understanding things. So I think that is a very valuable learning experience and a way also to freshen our approach to a piece. And that leaves you, Gila. You should have spoken.
Well, I would just say one thing. I want to
add to the wonderful things that Professor Ungár said, another thing that we don't see nowadays happening that much is reading. And I think you should all read biographies of not just the composers, but also the great pianists, and try to, talking about YouTube, actually, well, YouTube is a fascinating thing, has a lot of positive things to it, and you can also find interviews with some legendary people, or and then Richter, and I mean, there are wonderful things going on there that you can listen to and gain a lot of insight. But reading is something that we don't do anymore that much. So books are important too. Yeah.
So
There has been a shift in attitudes. I first heard the name Chanson François from my teacher, Olga Samarov. Now, this was in 1947. And she said, after speaking to me about the importance of accuracy, that is to say, musical accuracy, she said, and I'm glad that the New York critic said that we will not accept playing like Chanson Françoise. And that made a great impression on me. I was 15 years old. And of course, it was a reaction to what she considered the excesses of what we're looking at following now. And so there's been this shift of the pendulum. And we have to go with it. And for you, it's very important to find freshness. And for another generation, it's very important to be respectful to the music. And I think if we move that way, we'll end up with a happy balance.
But I like what Dr. Ungár is saying about living the music as opposed to making music. That's an important point. And I think that that's a big conversation, because there are things, if I can say this without being a heretic, there are things which are more important than music in life. That is true. But to be successful and to really get the most out of music, one has to really live it. It has to be, I heard, I don't know if it's true, but I think it is true, that in St. Petersburg, Russia, after the war, when things were so scarce and life was very difficult, that music was more important to them than food. Literally, that when Shostakovich had a new symphony played, people went without food to go and hear the symphony, as it were. And that, when Van Cliburn went and won the Tchaikovsky competition, that people were crying, the Russian audiences were crying, because they remembered what the music meant at that point, as opposed to what the new Soviet realism had made their musicians to be. This is what I've read. I was not alive during that time, but I understand that is what's going on. I'm sure that Professor Lowenthal would have a great deal to say about that particular competition. But that kind of living for music, or living through music, or living because of music, and understanding what music gives, that's what the gift is for us of Beethoven sonatas, of Bach partitas, of Mozart sonatas, of anything, of the Chopin ballades that we were talking about. These pieces encapsulate something about humanity and what it is to live as a human being, that it is our privilege to bring to life. Like, I'm sure my students are tired of hearing it, but I've talked about the myth of Pygmalion, where the sculptor created a statue of a woman so beautiful that the gods turned it into a living woman, as it were. That's from ancient Greece. And that's our job. Whenever we sit down to play the piano, we take something and we cause it to come to life, as it were. We make that piece live as it should be. That's the performance standard, as it were. And that kind of gift, that creativity, has to be lived. It makes us better people, it makes us a better person. It makes the audience hopefully better people as they understand through the piece. That's a great gift and a great power in some senses. I don't want to become all mystic or anything like that. But it is something that's very important which one doesn't get if you simply make music. You know, oh, I'm doing it and I do it well and I want to make my living from it. But really what I want to do is go out and drink beer with my friends, you know, afterwards. That's drinking beer with your friends. That could be great and that can be important. But your life in music, that is a certain kind of commitment that needs to be there.
I think that a lot of this is about contacting, being in touch with your own energy. Because really what we are is a ball of energy. I mean, without having that sort of feeling, okay, what is your identity made up of? It's not only what your beliefs are, or how you worship, or who your biological family is. It's that internal flame, your own internal personal flame, that really keeps you alive, that you want to keep nourished, like you want to nourish your good health, so that you can continue to be living. When you go into the practice room, regardless of whether it's important to go to concerts and neighborhoods and all that, but really to create something at the piano, you have to be in touch with your inner furnace. And only you can turn on your furnace. It's not like you go to Publix supermarket here and get something that's never like your internal flame. It's your energy, and when your energy flow is stopped, then everything stops. So how you choose to nourish your energy and channel your energy is what we're really talking about. And I think there's a knack to going to the piano, and when you practice, maybe that's the wrong words, when you play every day, because play is a more fun concept than practice, where you're just wiggling your fingers. That energy and that all of the stuff that you've accumulated needs to come out, and we have to think of it in a different dimension, other than how am I going to get this ready in 3 days for my next lesson. It's more about what am I going to say, and do I have the right, which I think everybody does, to express how different I am or my uniqueness in life on this planet. And I think that's whatever the golden age of piano is now, or in the future, or every generation of the golden age. I mean, that's what really it is, the word golden age. Maybe that phrase is the wrong phrase altogether, because, you know, the gift of life is really terrific, and I'm hoping, or I hope that, you know, through the intensity of this festival, that you get some of this nourishment and that you can take it with you, and it never leaves you. If any of you have ever been really sick or had a very sick parent, or watched somebody, you know, who could die, I mean, you have the contact with what happens when they come back to life. I'm a good case, you know, because I went through, almost died last year, and here I am. I'm back, I'm done 100%, so I gotta get there. So I can tell you that, you know, not that you have to, I want you to experience that, or everybody should be in a concentration camp. Quite the opposite. I mean, you can stay very healthy and still realize how gifted and how privileged we all are to have this musical fountain. And that you have to kind of open these windows when you go into your practice room, whether you're sitting in front of an upright or a concert, and, you know, let the energy flow, and then you'll go to your own special place and nourish it. That's really what it's about. You know, another question? Anybody? Yeah.
I was just wondering what your overall thoughts on the current state of competition culture is, and whether you think it ultimately serves artistry, or is it kind of this, I suppose, this deadline where people try to learn notes as fast as possible without having the patience to really sit with the music and develop their own personal interpretations and relationship with.
Who would like to go first? Well done, Jerry. Did you like to address this?
I'll go. So,
Let's repeat
sure.
repeat the question.
So your question is how about the competition, the state of competitions these days, and the culture that it engenders, whether it is producing a certain kind of student or pianist who is more focused on accuracy of excellence in learning quickly and things of the sort, as opposed to someone who is taking the time to develop their artistry and their personal connection to this.
Yeah.
So that's the question. That's been asked.
People often say this. They say that the competition winners are middle of the road people and that the interesting people don't win competitions. If one looks, in fact, at the real situation, if one names the people one finds particularly creative, it usually turns out that their careers have been launched by competition. I remember Clyburn once, the Clyburn organization was put on the television program with some people discussing competitions. Leon Fleischer and Matty Axe and somebody else who I forgot. And they all dismissed competitions. No. But the truth is that they were all people, great artists, all of them, whose career had been launched by competitions. So the fact is that if you ask yourself, who are your favorite pianists? You will find some who haven't won competitions, but you're more likely to find some who have, and not only who have won, but who have projected their careers from the winning of the competition, as in the case with Fleischer, as in the case with Ashkenazi. That was the person I was thinking of. As with the case with Marta Argerich. I happen to have been with Argerich in a competition in which she won first prize, actually, and I won second. That was Busoni in 1957. She was 16 years old. And it was perfectly obvious, even to me, that she was going to win first prize, not because she had connections or because she adhered to rules, but she was simply wonderful. And so I don't think we need worry about the standards of competition. Some competitions will lean towards pedantry if their jurors lean towards pedantry. Others will lean towards freedom. People have said to me, I heard the Tchaikovsky concerto at the finals of the winner, and there were many wrong notes. How is that possible? Well, it's quite possible if one of the jurors or 5 of the jurors don't care about wrong notes. Some people do, some people don't, and that's what makes the game. And you're not obliged to do competitions, but it's a way of entering the level playing field, and it's also the way of being known to other people and to know other people. So I strongly approve.
Well, I just sat through the Clivens from minute 1, minute 100, minute. Look, I have not missed, that's not a proud thing to say, but part of our job in creation. Texas, but since 1981, I sat through all of them. And certainly the performance standard has got shoved out of the sky. I can't believe how people can play that fast and that many difficulties to go through. We bemoan the fact that many of them play the same way, and many of them fall by the wayside, and many of them are successful. Competitions are what they are. It is, at that moment, in this case, 9 people objectively saying, I prefer that person or that person. And you, I'm sure, are hearing from some of the jury members, they were just as surprised who have got into the quarterfinals, who got into the semifinals. However, there is a other side of it, of course, the pageantry, as what Jerry was saying, is huge. At this moment, they say, which I don't know if I can believe, but over 1.5 million persons have watched the streaming of the climber. I'm jealous because we only had so much for piano Texas, but let's face it is a big deal. That means that that many people have watched some portion of classical music. And that means that classical music is alive. The same way I believe that you go to YouTube and sometimes you see how many people watch this particular excerpt or whatever it is, and millions have watched it. So classical music is alive, and if this is the price we have to pay for it, then I am kind of all for it. It is the unfortunately playing with lives. That's what I don't care about. Because sometimes you name a particular person to win, and they cannot live up to the standard of what is expected of them. And that's why so many winners just fall by the wayside. But then again, that's part of education, what you are brought up with. If you are in a bachelor degree and you have to play 2 recitals, that's ludicrous. How can you possibly imagine to make a career out of 2 recitals in 4 years? Or how can you do a master's degree in 2 recitals or 1 recital? We live for the recitals, we live for oxygen. What is our oxygen? Repertoire. If you can, then of course I have students who say, I'm going to be just a teacher. I said, yes, that's fine, but you can't teach unless you learn. And that's part of life that you are living through. There's no shortcuts. Repertoire and competitions are a way of life. But to answer the question, as far as being so absolutely not perfect, I'm not sure if that, I agree with Jerry, I'm not sure if that counts. If you hear somebody who hits you somewhere in here, I think being open-minded is more important than anything else. If that person comes on stage from the beginning and somehow it hits a string within you, you forgive everything because they just made music, but it hits you. And sometimes no perfect performance doesn't mean anything. And that's how the jury is. We are not raising, I don't think what you are saying, are we raising students for the next competition because of no perfection? I think that comes from within you, not speak to you, but I mean you all. You all are craving to play a note perfectly because you are being raised in the fashion of perfection on recordings or Spotify, whatever it is. But then I grew up with Richter's recording that he made a lot of mistakes, or Claudia or Al, for God's sake. Yes, fistful of notes that were recorded and were beautiful. And I don't mind it. But I think that competitions are an important part of being introduced. And maybe it's one of the quarterfinalists will make a career in the climate competition because 1 million persons have heard it and only takes 1 million to do something about it. Never know.
Anybody else?
Well, I'll just say about your comment, is it the competitions which are forcing people not to develop a personal relationship with their piece? It doesn't have to be like that. You know, the major competitions are announced years ahead of time. You can prepare. The smaller competitions, we generally know when they're going to be. You don't have to compete, as people said. When you compete, you have to bring your best game forward. And there is a portion of that which is you have to understand the standard of performance. You do have to play as well as possible, hopefully as perfectly as possible, but that's not possible for anyone, really, to be perfect all the time. But what I wanted to say is it doesn't have to be that your personal connection to the score or your understanding of the music is sacrificed. Of course, that ought to be there as it were. One has to prepare for that and know what it is. And your relationship with your teacher, what help you? Your teacher should say, no, this is not the time for that competition, or yes, it is the time for that competition. for this purpose. So, I mean, how do you know what the standard is going to be unless you are actually in the ring boxing with other people? And that's very important. Even if you're not going to win, sometimes it's important to do a competition so that you understand the standard and how it works. But you shouldn't sacrifice yourself, as you're pointing out, for the sake of a competition. I had a student who, in the last 3 years, did several of the big competitions. She went to a Beethoven competition in Bonn and did pretty well. Played very, very well, I think, but she didn't get to the finals. And the finalists who got there, almost all of them played Hammerklavier, for instance, while I was sick. So everybody was saying, oh, you have to play Hammerklavier to get to the finals. Maybe that was true for that competition, I don't know. But several of the jurors came to her and said, we don't like this, we like you playing, please come and play at our school for concerts and so forth. So she was successful, even though she didn't get to the final round. So then, the next year, she got into the kind of first in-person round of Cleveland, played in Cleveland, didn't get past that round at all. Then she went to Leeds and got third prize. I mean, so it really just depends upon playing the same repertoire. It depends upon the jury, what they want to hear. And the thing that I'm proud about her for is that she didn't change who she was as a person. She didn't come back and say, oh, I need to play Hammerklavier now because I didn't get into the finals. She didn't come back and say, oh, I need to play more this way. Like when she played at Cleveland, she played Brahms 118. For some reason, the piano during her time decided that the G sharp was not going to sound. So she was playing Brahms 118, and that note did not sound, and she was fighting really hard to keep the performance fresh, and it didn't sound, and the director of the competition came up afterwards and said, don't worry, it's not going to affect the judging, and so forth and so on. Of course, she didn't go past that round, and the director said to her afterwards, you know, when you're playing Brahms, you should smile a little bit more. And I said, how the hell can you be smiling in a competition when the note is not sounding like this, and you're trying to keep it together? But she didn't come back and say to me, you know, I have to smile more when I play. And when she went to Leeds and did so well, she didn't smile anymore that she normally does. It was just a different journey, as it were. So that I was proud of her. She didn't change who she was. And I think that that's the point, that the competition platform allows people to hear you. It also refines who you are as a pianist. But you need to prepare for that, and not just kind of let the competition determine.
So we were talking about this. I have felt from the students here, and I know them when we longer and talk, a lot of them are picking up this feeling that they're under tremendous pressure from inside themselves, with probably their parents and not, to enter and win a competition by the time they are period or else. So I wonder if we can talk a little bit about, can you have a life with music? Can you have a fulfilling career? Can you have a successful career without winning a competition? Or have we passed the point that if all of these wonderful pianists here can't win a competition, their lives are over?
We do not do their lives. You mean like you, Joanne, who said, I just use that as competition.
Well, she's an example, and she's not an example because she had certain amount of contacts. Some of these people don't really have contacts, but how do you do this in a rational way? Can you name examples that are maybe not household words, words maybe that have had successful careers? I mean, let's look at us, Ruth. You know, it's not like there's no competition that are sitting here, but nobody's there on the stage in the usual way. Right? And so I think it is possible to have a life of music without feeling like the guillotine is going to come down on your head and you might as well sell insurance or something on your spirit too if you have a gig by now. I mean, I personally, I realize that we're spending more and more time talking about competitions and validating them, and that's fine, but that's one road.
Yep.
I mean, even from my house, where it's kind of at the beach, I can get to Tampa, even if, without going on the bridge, I can take a boat. I mean, they're way ways from, you know what I mean?
So I would like to talk about the word contacts. In one sense, it meant people of importance who can help you. But there's another sense, it's your friend.
That's what I mean.
Yes. And I was thinking, yes, it's important to do. I think competitions are great because they are more or less open to everyone. But there's the question of your roommate, who's a violinist, who's playing a recital, and the pianist suddenly got sick 3 days before the concert. Are you going to jump in and try to do as good a job as possible? Well, yeah, it's your roommate, and you're allowed to do it. And there's a chance to play piano in the orchestra production of something. And do you want to do it? Of course, for a pianist, sitting in an orchestra is so exciting with all the other instruments around. So even we want to have a life that's balanced. And balanced means making choices and making wrong choices, but trying to do a little bit of everything, you know, and especially having friends who are musicians, friends who want to listen to music, you know. Having a friend who wants to hear your slightly unfinished Brahms Rhapsody in a practice room is fantastic. So being here together is what's really so much better than being in a practice room. And so I think a great life in music is one where you're playing by yourself, with other people, helping other people, learning from other people. And each one of the reading, going to museums, each one of these takes time, playing soccer maybe. And we just have to figure it out.
But you know, there's because growing up in California, Los Angeles, and I mean, that's years and years ago. But one of the reasons I left the LA area is because I felt that, you know, it was all tainted by Hollywood. And that was early days of music development and classical music. The real action was in New York, you know. So when you get that way. But there are a lot of wonderful actors and actresses that didn't wear Academy Awards and that were discovered. Like somebody walks down the street and they see you. Oh, you're going to be a movie star. You know, it's a question of being part of a community. I think that's what I'm looking to say. And with your friends and with people that you know, not like you know, not like that agent that's looking for an actor or actress for a specific role. It's just the general population. And you sort of find places to play and you meet people and maybe play for a house concert. If you want to put in chamber music and all of that, that's great. But, you know, it doesn't, just when you turn 30, the bell isn't going to ring and the lights are not going to go dark. And hopefully the fire won't go out of your heart. You play music, just keep going because you don't know what your path is going to be. Nobody knows. I mean, we don't even know what our path is going to be tomorrow or the day after or at any time. So this idea that you have to go on this road as opposed to all alternate roads, I think it's a big difference.
I think competitions, I'm in general in favor of them. I think they're good. They're not the ticket to a career in music necessarily. I think they're one of many things that we as pianists do in our teens and 20s. And I think overall, they can be very positive. There are pitfalls. You can get stuck playing the same repertoire for 12 years and not learning new music. That's a big problem. If you have a thin skin or are emotionally vulnerable and you get rejected time and time again, you have to be able to get back up on the horse and keep doing it. That's a problem. With a certain personality, you have to develop a sense of self-confidence about yourself, about what you have to convey. But for me, a life in music has resulted from a combination of networking through summer music festivals, through doing competitions. I have 0 prizes in major competitions on my resume. I have a few good prizes in smaller competitions on my resume. I'm not sure those had anything to do with me being where I am today. Maybe they did. Looking back, you know, you all think you have a plan for how your life is going to turn out. And you're going to do this by the age of 25, and you're going to get married by 28. You'll have 2.5 kids by age 32. You'll have this by... It might work out that way, but it probably won't.
Yeah.
It's probably going to do something else. And when you're 40 or 50 or 89, you'll look back and it'll somehow have a kind of logic, but it has nothing to do with the way you planned it. It's just the steps that you take are kind of like sleepwalking. They have intent, but they don't necessarily know where you're going to go. So I would recommend to you, continue to make personal connections, because whether you win a competition, you have to get along with people. If you want to teach in academia, you have to get along with people. People know who they want their colleagues to be. Conductors, managers, concert presenters are not going to rehire people who don't know how to speak, how to interact with other people. I think there are a lot of skills involved in being a successful musician today. The social media aspect is something that I'm not adept at doing. It wasn't part of my generation, but it's part of yours. So take advantage of all of the opportunities that you have presented to you. Try to avoid the pitfalls of competition. When you turn 30 or 32, as I did once, I breathed a sigh of relief that I no longer had to do competitions, even though I didn't dread them. I've met many people, even the one I didn't win, especially when I didn't win. I met people who helped me, and I learned a lot from them. And large competitions have turned into a kind of grand celebration, festivals of their own, celebrating what we do in the music that we love, played for audiences that are very often larger than those who come to piano recitals. So embrace the positive aspects. Try to immunize yourself from the negative aspects, and hope for the best.
For instance, just one quick thing. We were talking about creativity as pianists, as musicians, but you also have to be creative as building your career. And think about entrepreneurship, which, try to do your own thing, establish a festival, maybe. Not that it's that easy, but I mean, like, have your own, create something on your own is also, could be an idea. Concert series where you can actually play yourself, maybe in a local church or something. So there are many ways to do things as network and join our music organizations, continue doing festivals, network, and keep in touch, musicians with each other.
I want to elaborate. All you really have to do at some point is decide, well, I want to play a concert. I want to play a concert and share it with my friend. Where can we play a concert? Talk to some people. A church is very good. A community center. Then you have to get people to know about the concert. You can learn all of this without necessarily taking even a course on entrepreneurship. Just do it. And you can start on the smallest scale, and 15 friends will come to the concert. And then maybe the waiter at the restaurant you were just at, and the person who helped you carry some packages. They'll say, we're giving a concert tomorrow. Do you want to come? And you could just start by doing it. And that will help you enormously. And it'll be fun.
Good. We just have a couple of minutes left. Any final thoughts from you guys? Yeah.
Speaking of that,
Angry, can you speak up?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because I think life is so fascinating, and there are many things I want to explore, but I feel like if I learn something like other than just music, I feel like my piano method not like that. It's like the setting. You see that? So how we find like balance between life, other things, and piano.
So your piano network is not exciting? Is that very exciting?
No, such
Can't you speak louder?
if I work like other skills,
Yeah.
it takes a lot of time. But piano also requires a lot of time. Right. Practice. So how we manage our
Well, nobody has perfect balance. It's impossible to balance everything perfectly, and you will struggle with trying to find a perfect balance. So when you're in balance, let's say, you're not, even if you stand on both legs, you're shifting your weight just a little bit. It's not 100% equal, even if you feel that, because there's the balance point is here. So even if you are in balance, your feel like a tightrope walker. You balance with your whole body. So the idea that you're going to be perfectly balanced, you could throw that out. It does not some balance so that you don't tip over completely. Like if you've ever gone on a surfboard or even a sailboat, right? So you don't want the boat to tip over, but it's going to lean quite a bit to one side or the other as you go through life. That's reality. And reality will pull you down, and then you have to rebalance yourself. We got 2 minutes. Anybody else, or should we just leave it there? You know, we're approaching Professor Lowenthal's soiree, so maybe this is a good place to end it. Thank you.